So I'll introduce Dr. Arvind Kumar Jha. Dr. Arvind Kumar Jha is currently working as assistant professor at the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering, IIT Patna. He completed his MSc from IOETU, Nepal, and PhD from Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, in geotechnical engineering. His research interests include areas of soil stabilization, ground improvement, biogeotechnics, geoenvironmental engineering, and rock mechanics. Dr. Jha published more than 30 papers in various national and international journals. He is currently guiding 7 PhD students. He has over 10 years of professional experience, both academia and industries, in the field of geotechnical engineering. He has also received many prestigious awards from ISSMGE Foundation and NEAST Nepal. So we welcome Dr. Arvind Kumar Jha. So incidentally, both chair and co-chair are of same guide students. Both of them were guided by Professor P.V. Shivapallaya at IISc Bangalore. So I'm very happy to introduce the both chair and co-chair. Now the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Raghuveer Rao, for your nice introduction. I welcome the team speakers, the delegates, my co-chair, and all the. I welcome the team speakers, Professor Patra, Professor Manna, Professor Arvindam Day, co-chair, Professor Arvind Jha. I'm very happy to welcome all of you. This particular session, basically we have one SOAP lecture and 2 special lectures. The speakers will speak on the analysis of pond ash embankments and concrete gravity dam foundation system for rock foundations and non-linear ground response analysis. So these are the theme lectures will be delivered by the experts. The first SOAP lecture will be delivered by Professor Patra of IIT Kanpur. Before handing over the presentation to Patra,
Professor
I
Ramesh.
would like to introduce Dr. Patra briefly. Dr. N.R. Patra is presently working as a professor in the Department of Civil Engineering, Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur, Uttar Pradesh, India. He obtained PhD degree at the Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur, India in the year 2001. Professor Patra has guided so far 12 PhDs, 56 dissertations, and a long number of projects of BTech students. He published technical papers in national, international journals and conference proceedings. He received awards from the Indian Geotechnical Society for his publications. He is actively involved in many continuing education programs. Professor Patra completed many prestigious sponsored research and consultancy projects. So welcome, Professor Patra. You have been given the times 30 minutes for the presentation and 5 minutes for the discussion. Over to Professor Patra. Professor Patra?
Yeah, can you hear me? Is it audible?
Yeah, continue.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, very good afternoon, everybody. It has been given me 30 minutes time, but this work is quite a long. This work started since 2008. So, response analysis of pond ash embankments located in seismic zone 2, 3, 4 India. A comparative study. So, who are the people?
Please share a screen, sir.
I have already said, not yet. So, in this project, particularly, it has been funded by TWICE, Department of Science and Technology, and CSIR. And this project is in 2019 has been given one of the best projects. So, there are 6 PhD students continuously they work. Dr. Supriya Mahanti right now, she's in Indian Institute of Technology, Banaras Hindu University. Dr. Sambit Prasanjit Naik, he is right now as a professor in research, South Korea. Vijay recently, she is in IISc Bangalore. Dr. Arga Asa Asango, is in Ethiopia, but right now she's in Texas Austin. And recently, Dr. Abhijit Kundu has graduated last year, and many MTech students. I'm fortunate enough to get sufficient funding from Department of Science and Technology and as well as CSIR to carry out this research work. It is still going on in this area. Let me start with this in brief, how Gangetic Plain has been formed, particularly in India, here particularly Himalayan, how it has been formed. It is about 6,400 kilometer journey, and it started with 2,000 kilometers certainly, and 300 kilometer compression in making the Himalayan itself. Now, in brief, how this Gangetic Plain starts. If you look at tectonic activities, initially it is kind of oceanic crust and lithospheres and sediments initially, and volcanoes are there. Over the period of time, this lithosphere and there is a deformed sediment here, and there is a deformed oceanic crust also. Over that period of time, there is a deformed sediment also there, and over the period of time, new sediment mounts, and this broken off lithosphere continues and sink. Then remains of the Tethys Sea, it is how geological map of the India it looks like. Now, if I take it back, so this is what we say, it's your Gangetic Plain. It's your Gangetic Plain. It is one of the most seismically active region in the world, I can say. So these vast alluvial soils are vast alluvial. There are soils, there are plants, and these particularly ash dikes, particularly in your power generation plants, coal ash based. So these ash dikes require huge land and proper utilization should be required. Based on that study, DST has given, and we are moving. I'll skip this, particularly your liquefaction mechanism. I can give it in brief. It is because of your once pore water pressure increase, contact forces loses, and liquefaction mechanism starts. Just in brief. So let me start with this. What is the motive that we have moved around? It was a very painful study, I can say. Almost 36 pond ash embankment. Initially, it was decided along the Gangetic Plain, but later on it was extended to go around all over India. So almost 36 embankment we started the study. Just few I am showing it what exactly happening, because we are sitting at Kanpur nearby UP. There are many thermal power plants. So Jhansi, Paricha, Anpara, Korba, Obra, Panki, Raebareli, Renusagar, Vindhyachal, Talcher. Talcher is eastern side, Aligarh and Panipat. These are very close location to us. However, we moved from there to southern side. We have gone to Gujarat, we have gone to Bihar, Odisha, all along the places we have taken the ashes and pond ash, and detailed study has been given, and the report has been submitted in 2009 in comprehensive paper. Now, pond ash project scenario, if you look at how the ash disposal in India, this is very common, you know this. This is one, your wet disposal, and other is your dry disposal. Generally, dry disposal has been avoided because it creates environmental pollution. Wet disposal mixing with the water and the putty. So about, you see, if you look at the present scenario, 30% utilization of ash, about 56,700 hectares of land to require for ash pond by, it was 2020, the data was taken, and now 25 it will be increased. This amount of land required to prepare a ash dike, ash pond So how, unless it has not been utilized or properly somewhere else it has been used, then you need a kind of land shortage. So that's why this requirement is there, number one. Number two, is the pondas embankment stable? Safety against the earthquake? The question is no. The recent failure of this ice embankment, one is NTPC recently, that is Singrauli. Other one also, same, two ice dikes, in one is Singrauli, both are in Singrauli, one is NTPC, other is that is Reliance company. And near the Bihar and Odisha, that is, I don't remember, that also recently happened because of this proper kind of earthquake safety and measurement has not been taken. So, if you look at the pondas, particularly pondas, playas or bottomas, a mixture of bottomas or playas in any proportions. So, as per the Sridhar of 1996, basically it has been classified as either it is a, it is silty sand or a fine fraction of this sand fraction will be more. So a study has started in particularly in 2008 in this area, and it is still continuing. So I'm showing, instead of all results, to just pick it up 3 different parts. Of course, this is one of the PhD thesis part I have taken it. One is your culture side, second is your Uttar Pradesh, where I'm sitting here, Pankia's type, and extreme one is your Panipat, Haryana, which is coming Zone 5. These aspects, we have taken it for as a case study. So before going to the sample preparation and other things, so what we have done is, we have started from the scratch. Almost field study, standard penetration test, seismic downhole test, and all density measurement we have carried out. Laboratory study, geotechnical tests, chemical analysis, and cyclic triangles, all we have done. So, what does it mean by means of your standard penetration test? The standard penetration test, once we have carried out, it almost gives an impression. This deposit is from loose state to either medium, dense, not even dense. Almost all cases, this SPTN is varying between 5 to 10, sometimes 10 to 15, this is the range. So this is the first indications that it is either in the loose state or it is in the medium dense conditions. Then from the field study, we have collected, and it is very difficult to take it out undisturbed samples, particularly pondas from the surface. It has been remolded. Now, this is the 3 classifications I put in. Culture, Panki, and Panipat, these 3 classifications put in. So, culture and Panki comes under poorly graded sand, and Panipat pondas comes under silty sand. If I classify, this will be SP, SP, and SMN. This classification is there. And as this sample is very difficult to prepare, particularly, so there are 2 types of sample preparations generally we go for. So that is based on your relative compaction, based on your relative density. So based on the relative compaction, depending upon how much of your fine fractions are there, and based on your relative density, coarse fraction how much is there. So by means of moist tamping technique and by means of suction method, generally, once it is a relative density kind of sand, you are doing a cyclic triaxles or simple triaxles CU and CD, then you have to go by means of suctions. Another problem is that, particularly let me go back to this one. Yeah. Particularly if you're taking the pondas and preparing by means of relative compaction or relative density by applying the suctions, it is high chance that this entire part will go inside. So it will choke the valve. So proper drainage and proper saturation may not happen. So GeoNet has been provided so that it will prevent particularly going inside. This is the beauty. So details I could not get the photographs. Otherwise, this sample preparation technique is challenging, and it has been done by means of moist damping methods, as well as GeoNet provided for CD test or CU test around the periphery of this. Now, this is general cyclic behavior of pandas in solid dynamics, pathway engineering. I'm just showing typical graph of your debris stress versus number of cycles, and your effective stress versus number of cycles, and pore water pressure ratio versus number of cycles. So, of course, this has been cross-checked with each other. If you look at the pore water pressure versus number of cycles, we are looking at pore water pressure ratio as 1. That liquefaction starts, then is it happening with simultaneously other part? It can be cross-checked. Now let me come back to typical figure, put it, effect of loading frequency, confining pressure, and relative compaction of liquefaction resistance, particularly 3 parts, Talcher, Punky, and Panipat. If I look at these 3 graphs, cyclic strain versus number of cycles for initial liquefactions, and cyclic strain, these are 3 cases. I put it. A is considering your loading frequency, B is your effect of confining pressure, C is your relative compaction. If you look at the effect of relative compaction on liquefaction, potential is more significant, particularly Talcher Pandas samples. Talcher Pandas samples as compared to Punky and Panipat. So Panipat Pandas sample shows higher liquefaction resistance as compared to your Talcher and Punky Pandas under a particular frequency. These are all step by step. Once is field study, it gives an indications of loose state. Then we go for cyclic trials and static tests. There we got some results. Then we go for this analysis, and then we come draw a conclusions what we are getting it back. Now, similarly, if you look at this, particularly your dynamic properties of the compacted pandas, typically 2 figures I put it. That is your dynamic shear modulus versus number of cycles, and damping ratio versus number of cycles. So, if you look at this this one, so the percentage increase in, if you look at this figure, percentage increase in the dynamic shear modulus will decrease in cyclic shear strain from 1.2 to 0.6% varies generally 7% to 15% and 10 to 21%. So this is what the clear indications it's giving, how it changes from depending upon the where it located, what kind of magnitude is there, cyclic test is there, and what is the proportion, what is the fine content, all will come into picture why it is happening. Though Talcher Pandas is located different and your Panipat is located different, I just put it 3 extreme cases. Then come to next part is your degradation index of the compacted pandas. These results, of course, based on your relative compactions. There is also relative densities. So if you look at the degradation index, this is a typical part, and you will be surprised to see that, particularly if you look at this is your Talcher and this one is your Talcher. It degrades in a very fast rate as number of cycle increases, and it is fast rate, and it is very steep up to 50 number of cycle. Then afterwards, there is no more further change. But however, while comparing this Talcher Pandas, if I compare with this Punky as well as Panipat Pandas, if you look at the degradation index, it takes almost 200 to 300 cycles completely to degrade, rather than as compared to your Talcher. Talcher, it is in a very fast rate. The degradation index is well defined by ITRIS 1978. It's a ratio of dynamic second shear modulus in the NS cycle to the dynamic shear modulus in the first cycles. So this is well defined. If you look at the degradation index part, culture is degrading in a very fast rate. What does it mean? That means it degrades. If there is an earthquake, that means it continuously degrades. Then after 50 cycles, we can say that there is no more further changes. Maybe there is a plasticity, other part will be there. So that part I am not going right now. So this is what we got. The kind of first one is SPT and seismic download test. From there, we range what is the shear velocity value in the range, and SPTN value generally 5 to 10. Then go to the other part, that is your cyclic Teixeil's test results. These parameters are required as input parameter, particularly analyzing Pondas embankment. So dynamic response analysis, if you look at, there are two. One is your by 1D analysis set and 2D analysis. So slope stability analysis by GEO5 has been carried out, and if you look at this, particularly different value of horizontal seismic coefficient KH were used, and the value of KH for which the factor of safety is equal to 1 was considered as yield oscillations. And here there is section 1, section 2, section 3. And if you look at, this is Punky Arch Dike, this is your particularly Panipat Arch Dike. It is 6 meter. Here the water table is located approximately from the crest. It is below that 7 meter is water table here. And these are detailed dimensioning has been given. These are the assumptions that set, you know, everyone how this there. Then input ground motions, we have considered northeast Indian earthquake, and for Punky and Panipat, because it is lying nearer to Himalayan thrust, so we have considered Chamba, Chameli and Uttarkasi. It has been accordingly either scale it down or scale it up accordingly. It has been done. Now come back to 2D response analysis. If you come back to 2D response analysis, and it has been done by means of OpenSys and constitutive modeling, particularly Pondas material, pressure dependent and pressure independent multi-material model generally used for cohesionless and cohesive materials. Then particularly 9-4 quad UP element, 9 noded with corner, 9 noded having 3 degree of freedom, and this interior will be 2 degree of freedom and zero length will be applied. First gravity analysis has been done, then followed by your dynamic resistance analysis has been carried out. This is how the numbering has been done, and this is your material property depending upon the confining pressure, depending upon all other conditions. This material property, input material property, has been taken from our dynamic or cyclic Teixeil as well as that static test results. So this is how detail has been given, what are the input parameter we have taken it. Then detailed convergence analysis has been done and validation has been done with the previously reported, though it is not with this as embankment, but it has been reported particularly with your 4.5 meter clay sand embankment. This is what the validation has been done, and graphically representation is there. Now if you come back to the dynamic response analysis, one is crest upstream side, and the numbering as there with this, and this particularly, the numbering how it has been done. It has been done with the help of there is your GID 7.2 origin flow 8, and the visualization also taken into picture so that we can take care of every part what is happening. Now let me come back to first one, the visualizations. If you look at here, variation of horizontal displacements of existing, that is means there are two conditions considered for this analysis. One is your existing water table conditions, and second one is your full saturation, that may be worst conditions. One's completely plot level. Recently, I got one bigger consultancy project recently, that is in Rihand we are working, that is your partial buttressing we are doing. That is considering a complete submerged condition. So there are two cases. One is considering natural water table, other is your full saturation or maybe submerged conditions. It is there. So if you look at there, the ranges, this is a typical diagram. What is your horizontal displacement? It is 1.33 meter. It's a quite large. Then come to, similarly I put it, come to vertical displacement, it is about 0.45 to almost kind of 1.6, 1.7, 1.8 meter. So as the node numbering has been done, I saw the typical part, how the node numbering has been made it, and from there, how it has been done. Then from there, this visualization has been there, the variation of your vertical as well as horizontal displacement of existing. Existing means we put it existing as if the water table is the same condition where the water table in the existing is there. It has been put it here. Now, based on these, if you look at, we have three parts. One is field study, one is laboratory study. Laboratory study, field study give the indications directly. The Searle velocity value also we can put it, and SPTN value has been utilized, and laboratory dynamic property has been taken into considerations. Then we have carried out the response analysis, almost all asteroids, and a comparative study has been made, and it has been classified zone-wise. What kind of PONDAS is there? Of course, earlier it is there CA, different classifications are there, but we have given a detailed guidelines what will happen, what supposed to be done. Now let me put it in a very simple way of the conclusions. The results of 2D analysis reveals much higher deformation value. It is about 0.21 meter to 2.32 meter in horizontal and vertical 0.41 meter to 2.03 meter. So it is almost all PONDAS, almost it is susceptible to liquefactions. Whatever we have, I have shown these three cases. Then let me start with this, a new one. It was a challenging. It was a kind of challenging. It is a Renusagar PONDAS embankment. If you look at the sea level here, 352. Here it is your 300. Now it is a 52 meter high PONDAS embankment. And Professor Dayal at that time, they have started this design, but later on it has been changed. Now there is bond 1, bond 2. So it is almost 52 meter. So groundwater table, I can say water table is 7.5 meter below the crust. And this was interesting. And same way we have started with own generating our finite element code, OpenSys, as well as other part we have started it. So same with this SPTN values, particularly your PONDAS embankment as well as foundation soil. This is one of the publications of the Yadav et al. 2011. It has been taken. So PONDAS embankment, if you look at this particularly Sonbhadra district, this one is your Renusagar PONDAS embankment, 52 meter height. If you look at here, it is almost between 10 to 15. If I put it, it is between 10 to 15. But foundation soil, it is slightly dense. It is 15 to 20 there. Then finite element analysis has been done. So both OpenSys, both it has been developed also. Then material properties, experimental investigation, this is your material property. It has been considered. Then the backbone curve, using finite element analysis, of course, it has been based on the cyclic tricycle experiment. It has been developed and the backbone curves. Then there are pre-vibration analysis as well as post-vibration analysis has been done. And natural periods are evaluated using relationship given the gadget. So Then this Pondas embankment in seconds, if you look at the mode, fast mode after gadget, thus 1987 it is 0.63, and based on our study, finite element study, it is 0.7. Then come back to your, after this, the seismic analysis has been done, and 5 earthquake considered Chamba, Chameli, Uttarkasi, Indian Burma, Xinjiang, and how it has been scaled down, scaled up, detail has been shown, and scaling factor has been put in there, and recorded how much is station of recorded. This has been put in magnitude in detail. Then isolation response spectra. If you look at isolation response spectra, particularly if you look at this slide, this isolation response spectra, if you look at, so it is observed that the amplification is not significant, particularly in foundations from bedrock to base of the embankment. However, the response significantly amplifies in the Pondas person in most of the motions. So FEM analysis indicates, this is our fundamental part, FEM analysis indicates more amplifications compared to SEC analysis, particularly at your top of the embankment for all earthquake motions. Then this is your isolation time history for your amplitude. So then displacement profile is also there. Peak ground isolation versus displacement, here peak horizontal and this, and the vertical is there. And the vertical displacement, even if you look at the vertical displacement, shows even higher amplification with crest level. With this, particularly this crest level, higher amplification is there. I don't want to go to the details. Let me go to the very simple one. So this is the comparison with the what are the available literatures. It has been given by ICMA ATL 2013. So this is the range has been given. So if you look at this, there is a large variation of response which may be attributed for different magnitude, energy content, dominant frequency of that, and mean amplification profile lies within the range provided in the literature. It lies within the provided in the literature. So Chamba and Xinjiang earthquake having low magnitude provided lower bound, and whereas Uttarkasi with highest magnitude, it is in the upper bound. So what would be the, from the numerical investigation, because we put it as a case study, it is a 52-meter height, a significant amplification in the isolation response has been observed between the base and crest of the embankment. The Pondas embankment has shown susceptibility to liquefactions. And next stage, this is what we have just started with your geosynthetic and the ground improvement technique all over there. How it can be done, because it is already constructed, is there. First raising, third raising, second raising is there. So buttressing part, we are just now involved, either partial buttressing or full buttressing. This is how the extended study is there. Consultancy is different, and this is kind of a research studies going on. So the entire presentation I have taken from the publications of my students, selected publications. So these are the selected publications from where it has been taken. It is really very difficult to do at a stress, field study, lab study, then analysis. It was kind of painful. Go to the field, stay and do the job. But thankful to the students, means all the students, those who have associated, almost 6 PhD students graduated considering this area, and 10 to 12 MTech students. I just thank you, all of you. So this is how it is all about the talk. Any questions, any now?
Thank you, Mr. Patra, for a nice presentation and maintaining time. And 5 minutes are there for questions. The participants can post your questions. so that we can ask the question to the speaker. You can forward that question to the speaker. Any questions? Since the chart is not there,
Can I have one question? Can I have one question?
Yeah, please.
Sure.
Professor Patra, it is very interesting study. Particularly, testing all these pond ash and all from different places and getting the properties. It's a very tough study, particularly experimentally. But I have one doubt in mind that when we try to estimate liquefaction based on the laboratory test results of the samples collected, but liquefaction is a phenomena which includes the ground. So now how do we, kind of come to a conclusion that this is going to liquefy when it is on different ground? All the ash is above ground and we have the properties of the ground below. So how do we estimate the liquefaction based on the laboratory studies of the?
We have done the borehole up to 40-50 meter. Means we have gone beyond foundation level.
Okay.
So entire dike we started SPT, CPT and doing the bore log.
Yeah.
And suppose ash embankment is 6 meter, 10 meter. Only difficulty is Renu Sagar because 52 meter height is your ash. Then below there another we have gone another 30 to 40 meter ground surface.
Okay.
The problem lies collecting undisturbed soil sample, particularly ash. Though many places people claim that they can collect undisturbed pond ash samples, it is very difficult, and honestly, it is not possible to collect the undisturbed pond ash samples. These are all disturbed.
Yes.
So that's why relative compaction or relative density has been put in.
Okay. In case the underlying soil is non-liquefiable, is there any chance of this bund being liquefiable?
Yeah, there are certain cases we have seen. We have gone through the Assam, and as well as this side of there is underlying is very strong rock, a very hard strata is there. So we are considering. Suppose there is a ash dike. Suppose there is no foundation soil. Suppose as if you assume that the foundation soil is a strong strata. Okay. So we are analyzing the only difficulty we are analyzing considering the bedrock there. Now, which is a kind of assumptions, but it is liquefiable because this is in case of a loose state. Because what happened while providing the pond ash embankment, generally we design the ash dikes. Here many ash dikes are involved. So now we have started with a trend. We are giving certain foundation, even ash material also inside the ground surface while doing it. So it is, of course, it is there. It is there. It is there. This study.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Raghuveer Rao. If there are no questions, I invite the next speaker, a special lecture by Professor Bappaditya Manna of IIT Delhi on the topic seismic response of concrete gravity dam foundation system or rock foundation with shear zone. Before you present, I would like to introduce briefly Professor Manna to the audience. Dr. Bappaditya Manna obtained MTech degree from IIT Kanpur in the year 2005 and PhD degree from IIT Kharagpur in the year 2009. He is presently working as Associate Professor in Geotechnical Engineering section at IIT Delhi. He has been involved in geotechnical research, consulting and education for more than 10 years. He is the author or co-author of more than 25 scientific papers in reputed journals and 70 papers in conferences. He already guided 5 PhD students and 36 MTech dissertations. He is a member of American Society of Civil Engineers, Deep Foundation Institute, Indian Geotechnical Society, and ISSMGE. His research interests are in the area of files under machine-induced vibration. So now I invite Professor Manna for delivering the lecture on seismic response of concrete gravity dam foundation system for rock foundation with shear zone. Over to Professor Manna.
Thank you, Professor Ramesh, for introducing me. So let me share my screen first. So I first thanks the organizing committee member of 7 ICRAGE for giving me the opportunity to present the special lecture on seismic performance evaluation of concrete gravity dam on rock foundation system with shear zone. I'm Bappaditya Manna. I'm presently professor in Department of Civil Engineering, IIT Delhi. So basically, this work which I'm presenting is a part of a consulting work which IIT Delhi has taken up. So you know basically that the hydropower project. So in India, so we have a basically lot of potential site where the hydropower project or hydropower dam has been constructed. So India basically ranks 6th in the hydropower production in the world. And if you see in this slide, so you can see that basically different location has been identified as a potential location for the hydropower dam. But if you see that developed part is very limited, even for the northeastern part, we have a huge potential of the hydropower generation. But there are certain issues for which we cannot implement it as per our expectation. So basically, the construction of a dam is basically the backbone of any hydropower development, and it having some less carbon footprint. So basically, this hydropower dam is not only for the production of the power; it also used for the different other purpose like flood control, irrigation, water storage, and tourism, so on. So now, if you see the problem of the dam foundation, it happens because there are lot of uncertainties involved in the properties of the rock which exist and which is identified as the potential site. So because the dam is a massive structure and it developed the high stresses in the foundation due to the large load imposed by the dam body itself. And it has been found that the 20% of the failure cases happen due to the foundation failure due to the excessive load of the concrete dams. So therefore, the most problem which we found that the interaction, soil structure interaction with the dam and the rock foundation due to the troublesome geometry, which therefore needs for the greater attention. And we need to understand that if there is some joint which is filled with some clay material, or if there is some shear seam exist at the site, so how to build a dam foundation with proper design. So therefore, this kind of similar problem arises one certain location. So I'm not here saying the location because of the NDA agreement between IIT and the client. So here there is one site which is proposed for the hydroelectric project of about 1200 megawatt power, and we have found that the right bank of the site, basically there is a huge rock slope failure happen, and therefore this part was become very unstable, and therefore cutting of the slope was not possible, because whenever we are cutting the toe, that all the slopes start failing. And you understand there is a huge mass. If this kind of failure happen, I mean the whole thing will be just crushed away. So therefore, the client approaches us and they told that that this 1 to 13 has been proposed. These are the 13 different the segment of the dam, and out of which 1 to 11, 12, and 13. These are the exist on the left and the right part of the slope, and which is okay. But whereas in the 8, 9, and 10, you see there is some lot of weathered rock was there, and if you start cutting here, and you may reach to the parent rock or the foundation rock. But the problem was that when you start cutting this part, the whole thing may get collapsed on the right back. So therefore, there was an issue that how to tackle this problem and what is the possible solution for that. So the 5, 6, 7 that was, and 3, 4 that is also okay, because it reached up to the foundation grade rock. So the construction can be done and excavation happen. So the challenges arises here for the block 8, 9, and the 10. Where you can see that these are a lot of the loose material exist, and you can't cut it because there will be the right bank slope will be unstable for that. So therefore, you can see the site location where you can see this is the location of the block 8, 9, 7, 8, and 9. Here, this is the block 7, 6, 3, 5. There was no issue, but here there is a issue because you can't excavate further to reach up to the parent rock or the foundation rock, because otherwise the right bank will be collapsed. So, and one more challenges was there, that during the the soil investigation or the ground investigation, it has been observed that there is the shear zone exists at the exposed cut slope, and it has been just lying below between the blocks 6, 7, 8, and 9, and which having a thickness of around 8 meters. So therefore, they suggested to not to excavate further, and we need to first take care of the shear seam and also the loose soil. So there are two things here. One is that we should not cut further because there is some collapse of the right bank, and also we need to take care of the shear seam exists below the foundation. So therefore, they suddenly come up with some solution that why can't you place the piles? So piles at a certain block number. So therefore, they placed here at the 8 and 9 that they place the pile foundation there, so that they're expecting that the maximum load from the superstructure, that means from the dam, can be transferred to the parent rock or the bedrock, so that they can avoid the stresses or the load on the shear seam. So that is basically kind of the load transfer they are expecting, that okay, why can't you place this foundation and you build a dam at the various blocks. So now that the client approaches IIT Delhi, so we find out the design philosophy first. So that is as per this IS code. So IS 6512 is very well established code for the design of the solid gravity dam. So there are 7 load combinations up there. So load combination A saying it's a self weight of the dam, then load B, dam weight and the water pressure, and C is the dam with the water pressure and the maximum tailwater level, and considering the uplift. So here C and the D and E is the combination of the A and the earthquake. And here I am talking about this part because this basically the conference is more inclined to the earthquake. So here I will see that how we can take care of the load combination A with the earthquake and load combination B with the earthquake, and how the result, whether it is going in the favor of the design or we need to go for some modification, that I will be showing you. And another thing, that the earthquake analysis has been done with the 2 cases, that is one with the pseudostatic analysis, one is the site specific seismic data. So here this is just a standard procedure which is there in the software called finite element software called Plaxis. We considered the Planston model in 2D. So this is the concrete wrap. There is some wrap below there, and the wrap there is a certain portion we are providing the pile foundation which passes through the shear zone and the weathered rock. And here you can see on the left part there is some fresh rock available. So this is very standard procedure, that creating some geometry, then we can generate the mesh, define some initial condition, then there is some stage construction as per the site construction process, then run the analysis and check the result. So here, this is basically the site map, and as per the same geometry and the material property, whatever is available, we try to simulate, replicate the same thing in the Plaxis. And here I'm just showing you some steps basically which we follow. So this is basically, you can see the wrap dam, and we introduce the wave load, and this is the dam body. Here is the backfill material. Here you can see this is the weathered rock. There is some shear zone, pile groove, and there is some wrap and hydrostatic pressure and the fresh rock. So this is a standard, standard boundary condition. We consider the bottom fixed, and at the side there is some X fixed and the Y free. So this is very standard thing. We got it. And as far as the modeling part is concerned, we consider the soil and the rock with the 15-noded triangular element with the cluster features, and dam body is considered to be a 15-noded triangular element with polygon cluster feature. Wrap is modeled with the plate features, and similarly for the pile with plate feature, considering the effect of the spacing in the plane stem. And the interface we are considering to be the rigid element. That means it's a rigid contact between the dam and the foundation soil. So these are the various soil and the rock properties, and that is based on the soil investigation data obtained from the site. So basically there are four major components. One is the fresh rock, weathered rock, and shear zone, though it's a big question mark that how accurately we can get the properties of the shear zone, overburden, and the backfill material. So these are the properties we obtained. And the dam parameter has been taken. So basically we take the parameter corresponding to the M15. So this is the property has been taken, and the PCC has been done with the M25 concrete. So these are very standard properties has been taken, and these are the standard process. First create the mesh generate, and with considering the element with the fine and the coarseness factor varying from 0.25 to 1. And initial condition, first apply the gravity loading to generate the institute stress. The stage condition, that means first filled with the PCC up to the foundation level. And the second stage is the casting of the pile. And thereafter we cast the raft. And then, we apply the load of the, dam. Dam is basically constructed here, and which is placed on the raft pile foundation system. So in the first case, there is no tailwater is considered. And then in the stage 5, we consider the full reservoir elevation, and there is no tailwater on the downstream side, and we consider the normal uplift pressure. And the stage 6 is basically the reservoir at the maximum level, and all tailgates are open and normal uplift condition. And stage 7 is the combination of A and the earthquake. And similarly, F is the combination of B with the earthquake. And this is basically just a combination as per given in the IS code that all the drainage holes are the inoperative, that is for the maximum uplift condition. And similarly, the load G is the combination with E, but with the extreme uplift. So all combinations has been considered in the analysis. So here I'll just telling you that how to get the parameter for the seismic condition and what are the various type of result we obtain. So as per IS 1893, that site is belongs to the zone 5. So we consider the seismic zone factor as per the zone 5, that is 0.36. So our horizontal acceleration coefficient has been taken 0.36 G, and vertical acceleration coefficient is 0.24 G. So that has been given as an input to the Praxis. And the second analysis is based on the site-specific seismic design parameter. So site-specific study has been done, and this is you can see the correlation of the epicenter of the past wave with the major tectonic movement. And here you can see the different location of the fault and the gravity fault and the thrust fault, shear zone, and there is some project site has been located here, and the various magnitude has been also indicated in this map. So based on that, the seismologist gives us two values. One is design basis earthquake, time acceleration history in the horizontal direction and the vertical direction. So here, based on that, you can see basically the peak count acceleration for the horizontal is 0.316 G, and whereas vertical case is 0.206 G. So we apply both the cases in the Praxis model, and we try to see that how the dam and the foundation system. Yeah, so we have taken the different point here, and here we found that at the top, that is at the point C, we have seen that it rotates maximum, that is 2 or 3 times the input acceleration history. So these are the different, typical result of the analysis: deformed mesh, dam displacement, principal stress, and the deviatoric stress. So what we found that maximum compressive stress is just exceeding the allowable compressive stress at certain location, that is at the toe and the hill level, and other part that is okay. And whereas similarly for your dam founding layer at the PCC level, it also exceeded near the hill and the toe region, but other part remaining the stable, that is within the permissible limit. Similarly, at the rock foundation, it has been found it is less than the allowable peak rock mass compressive stress. So if you see the behavior of the structural member, that is raft and the pile group, you can see the settlement response, you can see the axial forces and the bending moment on the pile. And this is the shear forces of the pile that is required for the calculation of the reinforcement. That is not the concern of the geotechnical engineering, but we pass on all the information to the structural engineer. So this is the bending moment on the raft and the shear forces of the raft. This is very standard thing. So what we can found as a geotechnical engineer, that pile axial force, that is well within the permissible limit, because the allowable vertical pile we found that is around 4,000 tons, which is much less than that. and maximum settlement is coming up to 43 mm, and the allowable is 50 mm, because if you see the latest code IS 16700, that is the criteria for the structural safety of the all structured building. So it has been recommended 50 mm. But if you go by the IS 2911 part 4, it's saying 25. But there is no code specified that what to take for the dam foundation. Therefore, we adopt that why not to take for the tall storage what the wrap pile foundation has been recommended. So we go out with the 50 mm settlement. So that is within the permissible limit. Similarly, you can see the settlement of the wrap, that is also within the permissible limit, but no maximum differential settlement criteria is given for the dam. But yes, this is almost very negligible. So 1 by 3 and 3,500 is quite less. And we have also compared with the pseudostatic analysis with the time history analysis. So we can see that they are mostly talking to each other, not much difference, except for the pile load, where you can see it's almost double that maximum axial load on the single pile. So, but still, I mean, with the time history, that load which you get from the single pile, that is less than the safe, load carrying capacity of the pile. So final recommendation. Yes, sir. Just one slide. So final recommendation was there. Yes, we can reinforce the zone with the PCC fill below the dam, and we can recommend the RCC below the upstream site where we are getting a very localized stress concentration. So therefore, this has been recommended finally. And I like to add the challenges. The challenges is that to get the site specific shaping design parameter, because that is the the key parameter from which the entire thing is dependent, and the dynamic properties of the soil and rock, particularly joints and shear seams. And we need to understand the boundary condition, and for which you need to give a lot of trials for that. And obviously, this kind of analysis needs a lot of computational time. So we have to. It's not very suitable for the industrial problem because the time is very limited there. So I will just conclude here. Thank you very much for this opportunity. And any question? Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Manna. Any questions from the audience? Please post it.
Yeah, can I have one question?
Sure, sir.
Professor Manna, very interesting study. I have one question. When you designed the piles, did you consider any load because of that shear zone, lateral force?
No, actually, see, I mean, it's a finite element model. So yeah, we are not introducing any kind of lateral forces there. But where we have found that it is there, because we have found that at the interface of the shear zone and the intact rock, the moment is maximum. So there we are expecting that bending moment is maximum, means there is some lateral displacement happen. So there is coming. So basically we pass on this information to the structural engineer. They need to put the reinforcement accordingly to take care of bending moment.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? If there are no questions, I'll go. Thank you, Professor Manna, for your excellent lecture.
Thank you very much, sir.
Now the next speaker is Professor Arvindam Dey. Professor Arvindam Dey.
Hey, Ramesh, Professor Ramesh, he is Arindam Dey, not Arvindam. Arindam Dey.
Sorry, Arindam Dey. Arindam Dey. Make a pardon. Dr. Arindam Dey is currently an associate professor in the Geotechnical Engineering Division, Department of Civil Engineering, IIT Guwahati. His research interests include geotechnical earthquake engineering, reinforced soil structures, slope stability, and landslides, and geophysical investigation. His current research group includes 8 PhD students and 3 MTech students, and has already supervised 5 PhDs and 20 MTech dissertations. His research group has published more than 240 technical papers of international and national repute. He is a member of several professional bodies, including ISSMGE TC 208 Committee on Slope Stability and Landslides, IGS, TRG, IEI, and FORSEC. So, very good, excellent achievement, Professor. All the professors and Arvindam Dey also. IIT Guwahati, and he is delivering a lecture on non-linear ground response analysis, a case study of Amingov North Guwahati, Assam. And also I remember Arindam Day was a very key person. He was a key person in IGC Guwahati conference. So he is well known to many people in India. Welcome, sir. Over to Arindam Day. Stage is yours.
Okay. Thank you so much, Professor Ramesh. I hope I am audible. Thank you so much. So first of all, my heartfelt appreciation to the 7th ICRA entire organizing team for managing so well such a vast conference of diverse fields, and that too in the online system. In this pandemic time, it is highly needed, and all of the attendees are definitely benefiting from this. So moving on to this particular topic, which I have chosen for this presentation about nonlinear ground response analysis. Already some of the things have been introduced by Professor Patra in his SOAP lecture. Some part has been touched by Professor Manna in his lecture as well. So in this particular topic, I would showcase a particular small study about our IIT Guwahati, which is located at Amingao in the locality of North Guwahati, Assam. So to start off the topic, so just to get a glimpse of what is the ground response analysis, by now we will understand that. So here we try to find out the response of the ground when the earthquake motions are propagating through the same. And in this process, we are basically trying to assess the response of the layered deposits when it is subjected to the vertically propagating shear waves. Different utilities we have, we try to predict the ground surface motions, we try to develop the design response spectra, we evaluate the dynamic stress and strain for the estimation of liquefaction hazards. And one of the most important thing is that we try to determine what is the induced forces in these structures and try to find their response, as Professor Manna was rightly pointing out, from geotech to structures, how the thing propagates. When we look into the world of GRA, so it is basically a vast world. We can do different types of analysis. We can do it in 1D, which is the most common. 2D and 3D are in use. We can think it in terms, doing it in terms of linear analysis, equivalent linear, or the complex nonlinear analysis. We can do it in frequency domain, time domain, or mix up the two for hybrid analysis. Depending upon the absence or presence or negligence of the pore water pressures, you can achieve a total stress or effective stress analysis. In terms of bedrock characteristics, you can consider it as rigid, where basically you model a bedrock itself, or a elastic bedrock system, which more represents like a hard soil. It still has the dynamic impedances. It may be permeable or impermeable, whether it is allowing the water to flow through or not. And most importantly, this world has a lot of rules which are basically guiding the loading, unloading, and reloading criteria, meshing, non-meshing, and various types of loading, unloading, reloading rules are present. Now, a whole lot of physics and mathematics is at the background. We do a whole lot of strong motion characterization. We try to see the input motions, devise them in terms of their amplitude, frequency, and duration characteristic. We talk wave propagation, refraction, reflection, their dispersion, scattering, all the mechanisms of waves traveling through the soil. We talk about transfer functions, amplification functions, and impedance functions. I just gave here some expressions. Let us not bother about that, because these are mathematical expressions which you will find in any textbook system. And we talk about the strain compatibilities, especially with the waves. When we try to convert the surface response to the bedrock level, or vice versa, we use convolution and deconvolutions. What do we do in this type of nonlinear ground response analysis? Basically, we carry out a time domain analysis. We convert, or we imagine the continuum system to be represented by a series of single or multiple degree of freedom system. We consider a lumped parameter system. So we lump the masses, the stiffness, and the deformations of the system into some specific units. And basically, we solve for the equation of motion, so which incorporates the mass, stiffness, and the damping matrix, and we try to find out the displacement of the system in terms of the displacement of the ground motion which is being induced. Now, instead of inducing displacement, one can do with the induced velocity or acceleration as well. We just need to cater it properly in this equation. We solve this equation through numerical integration in small time step. So time integration scheme is developed and available. It might be explicit or implicit depending upon the call. Most important thing which is required in such solutions is basically the judgment of the cyclic nonlinear stress strain models. Different types of models are available: Messing, Ramberg, Osgood, HDCP models. I'm not going into those details. The most common which we use is the pressure dependent hyperbolic model, which has been developed by Matasevich 93 and which has seen many improvements, where we basically try to induce the strain dependent damping and strain dependent shear modulus to take care of the loading, unloading and reloading rules. So that behavior, again, which has been largely used, is by Phillips and Hashash. So when the cyclic loading, unloading and reloading goes on, there is an intricate rule which needs to be followed for the development of the shear stress and strain. It is one of the expressions which govern that. We need a hysteretic damping reduction factor. So as you cyclically load and unload the soil, some amount of energy is lost, which is basically related to the damping. So this hysteretic or cyclic damping reduction factor is used. Pore water pressure generation models are used if your system has the incorporation of the water or the groundwater table. And then obviously we have to take care of the dissipation models as well, which are based on the consolidation theories. Now, all these incorporated in one simple system, that's when we arrive at the time domain analysis. So individually the systems are complex, but then we have some regular inbuilt systems which you can always use. The main inputs to GR are the dynamic parameters, the backbone curve, shear modulus and damping ratio, which are basically the strain dependent parameters. We rely a lot on the hysteresis plot, which is basically the cyclic loading, unloading and reloading as you go on loading the sample with number of cycles. And when you join the peak stress reversal points, we get what is called the backbone curve. One can imagine this as the stress strain curve over the entire loading, unloading, reloading cycle under dynamic condition. Each of these hysteresis curve is characterized by different modulus. So one is the tangential shear modulus, which we mostly use in the nonlinear analysis. One is the second shear modulus joining the origin and the point of stress reversal. And the other one which we use is the initial or instantaneous shear modulus at the small strain level. Now, depending upon the hysteresis loop, depending upon the number of cycle, different parameters, it might be symmetric or asymmetric. And based on the nature of the hysteresis loop, you can actually evaluate the modulus of shear for a particular strain level and its damping ratio. And what we get is this backbone curve, from which we find out the dynamic parameters of modulus reduction curve and damping ratio as a function of cyclic shear strain. Now, looking to this curve, it might look simple, but a hell lot of factors actually influences the soil type, relative density, fine content, and all other factors related to the soil mechanics characterization itself, and over and above the dynamic factors of number, frequency of loading cycles, cyclic strain amplitudes. Now, when you do a ground response analysis, you can always use some standard inputs, which has been well developed by Seed and Idris, Vucetich and Dobry for sandy and clay soils respectively, available in any standard format, which is mostly dependent upon the effective vertical stress or related to the effective confining stress and the plasticity index for the clay system. However, you can also do a site-specific input induction. You can collect the samples from the site, conduct cyclic triaxial test, and you can basically figure out what is the modulus reduction curve and damping ratio curve for a specific soil sample collected from a site. One of the other important parameters is the shear wave velocity profile distribution. Mostly or very conveniently, it is done from SPTN values, the most common technique which is used in any soil investigation scenario. You find out the SPTN value and figure out a power law which you can use to convert the SPTN value to the shear wave velocity. This is one of the most popular one by Imai and Tonocchi, developed in 77. However, there are a lot variants of this and one can conveniently use depending upon the characteristics of the soil. Other way which you can do if the resources are available is to conduct a NDT geophysical investigation in the field, conduct MSW survey, you lay out the geophones, you find out the time travel records or the wavefront records, find out the dispersion image where you try to figure out what is the phase velocity related to, how is it related to frequency, and then you do an inversion analysis of that and figure out what is the shear wave velocity profile with the depth. Here you can find out the number of layers, the thickness, and the velocity distribution with the depth. In general, it is done in 1D, and you can do it in 2D features as well, so that over the entire space you can really find out what is the shear wave velocity distribution along the depth and along the lateral direction. Now, this is the case study which I wanted to focus on. We figured out the case study about IIT Guwahati and the Amin-Gao region, where we conducted the nonlinear ground response analysis. And first of all, I should thank to Reliant Engineers and our Institute Works department for providing us enormous number of boreholes in this entire area, from which we could figure out all the different characteristics of the N values and then relate it with the shear wave velocities. We conducted many MASW tests along different regions in this Amin-Gao site and inside our campus as well. We could figure out very well, depending upon different boreholes, what are the distribution of the unit weight and the shear wave velocity. And as mentioned, we have our own results from our cyclic triaxial test, collected samples of clayey and sandy medium, and figured out what are the various shear modulus reduction curves and damping ratio curves, depending upon the strains. Mostly in this region, the soil is either clayey or sandy, depending upon the deposition in the alluvial bank of river Brahmaputra. We subjected each of these boreholes, which we have collected from different agencies, and we subjected it to some particular motion. This is a scaled up Sikkim 2011 motion, which has been recorded in our institute accelerometer itself, and we characterize the entire motion, which is very important to do in any ground response analysis. So these are the different strong motion parameters which you characterize and then try to bring out the inferences in terms of the characterized motion itself. What should we look out for the nonlinear GRA? In this particular case, what we did look out for is the variation of the ground acceleration at different depths and the amplification which has been generated. Now, when we look into different boreholes, even though it is not so wide or vastly distributed given the small region, yet we can see severe amplification, surface amplification, which are vividly different and definitely which portrays the effect of local geology. It is very important when you carry out ground response analysis. If you see for lower input motion, the amplification is higher. For the higher input motion, the amplification is lower, which is in a way common in the sense that for higher amplification, yes?
Last 3 minutes.
Yes, sure. For the higher amplification, you can basically have a higher amount of strain generated and higher amount of damping. That's why your amplification for higher input motion goes low. You find out spectral accelerations, which help you to find out use it for the earthquake resistant designs. And then what you look for is the maximum shear stress ratio. When this ratio goes above 1, it indicates the chance of liquefaction or mobility. As I was mentioning, you look for the maximum shear strain. Larger strain induces higher damping, and that induces lesser amplification. One very important thing which you look for is the residual shear strain. That is the shear strain remaining at the end of the motion. And if there are high magnitudes of residual shear strains, these are indicators of mobility and liquefaction. You look into the hysteresis plots developed at different levels. The deeper you go, the soil becomes stiffer and you can see more like linear behavior. The more the soils located in lesser depths, they will show more nonlinear behavior, and this black line you can see the backbone curves. Then what we did is that we subjected the boreholes to very strong earthquake motion, 0.85 G Kobe motion, and the results are more vividly evident. You can see a very high chance of cyclic mobility, the shift in the hysteresis plots, and a very high residual shear strain. This activity we extended from each of the boreholes to different places at IIT Guwahati, even for the Guwahati city. And we carried out the same exercise to find out the VS profile variation, and then we use the Sikkim and the Kobe motions. Now, these typical GRA results, as already described, whatever liquefaction susceptibility we are looking into, wherever it exceeds 1, you can see much of the region is actually susceptible to liquefaction, and you can find out the depths below which it can liquefy as well. Severe shift in the hysteresis plot again indicates the chance of liquefaction. When we talk about liquefaction, it is not only one parameter which we should see, but a combination of each of them that helps us to identify. How does it help? We can find out the entire region PG and amplification factor, and you can see at some point there are not only at amplification, at some point there are attenuations as well. Now, these helps in your site-specific response studies. So local amplification and attenuation in the IIT Guwahati campus was also found. And then different influences of the peak bedrock motion was found, at which depth liquefaction can occur under low earthquake motion, under high earthquake motion. All these things can be found out. However, it is always good to look into the liquefaction potential index. Not only you need to know whether it will liquefy or not, but what is the severity of liquefaction. The same analysis can be extended to follow the guideline of the liquefaction potential indices, whether no liquefaction, moderate or severe liquefaction is opted. Now, these are some of the things which we do regularly. Now, when we say regularly, yeah, last 1 minute, when we do it regularly. So the way forward is that we do most of the things in a deterministic basis. Our soil and the terrain, geology, geomorphology all show extreme variability. We should incorporate probabilistic and uncertainty analysis. One of our paper discusses about that in detail. And further, what we need to incorporate is that we mostly rely on 1D. We definitely need to go for 2D, and that is also spatial variability needs to be incorporated. And you can see from this plot, if you incorporate this, lot of variations occur. The last thing which we need to understand as a way forward is that if there are existing structures, the GRA completely changes. So GRA in the presence of seismic soil structure interaction needs to be incorporated as well. So to mention about the final remarks, the main points what I wanted to convey is that you should judiciously use the input parameters, you should judiciously determine them. Which are the things you should have a lookout for in the GRA, and how do you develop the judicious inferences, and what are the important future directions of the research of progress. Finally, I would like to acknowledge definitely for the organizers of the conference to set up such a huge conference with a diverse topic and very beautiful interactions. To all these of students who have been intricately involved to come up with these findings, to all my academic colleagues and industrial partners, I thank you all, the organizers and the audience, for your patient hearing. All the papers which I have mentioned in brief here can be found in my website or in the ResearchGate profile, and a lot of more information can be deduced from them. So that will be all from my side. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed the session.
Thank you, Professor Arindam De, IIT Guwahati, for your nice presentation on nonlinear ground response analysis, a case study of Amingao, North Guwahati, Assam. And now over to the audience. Any questions? No questions are posted in the chat box. Anybody who wants to ask any question? 5 minutes left. If there are no questions, I request my co-chair, Dr. Arvind Kumar Jha, IIT Patna, to briefly summarize the SOAP lecture given by Professor Patra, special lectures given by Professor Manna and Professor Arindam De. Over to Dr. Arvind Kumar Jha. Stage is yours.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Professor Ramesh. So it was a wonderful lecture delivered by all the distinguished speaker. And one similarity I found in all three lectures, they have discussed about the real ground problem. So in all three lectures, which we have found it. So I will just go one by one. First lecture, SOAP lecture, was delivered by distinguished Professor N.R. Patra. He discussed about the response analysis of pond ash embankment located in seismic zone, second, third, and the fourth in the India. And he started with the briefly discussed about the liquefaction mechanism, and he also discussed about the pond ash embankment and what is the scenario of pond ash in India, and what are the problem associated, particularly with the disposal of the bulk amount of the pond ash generated. And also he discussed about the briefly about the characteristic of pond ash, and he explained very nicely by comparing all three sites which his team has done the research work. And also he explained about the experimental and field testing, like SPT and other seismic tests have been done to gather the data for the further analysis. And basically he focused on how difficulty is to prepare the sample of the pond ash for other geotechnical testing. And also he discussed about the liquefaction resistance, degradation index with number of cycle of 3 different characteristic of the pond as, and also in later he discussed about the how can we do the numerical analysis, particularly dynamic response analysis using 1D and 2D ground response analysis. And he concluded that all ponds, all type of the pond as is susceptible against the liquefaction, and we have to take care while constructing the any embankments. So it was wonderful presentation and excellent work. So the next presentation was done by Professor Bapaditya Manna, and he delivered the lecture on seismic response of the concrete gravity dam foundation system for the rock foundation with the shear zone. And he started his presentation with the scenario and the importance of hydro power dam in the India, and the problem associated with the dam foundation system, this particularly with the soil structure interaction. And also here he highlighted about the different type of the slope failures and the challenges associated with the excavation due to the presence of the shear zone and its effect on the slopes. And he also discussed very nicely about the design philosophy as per the IS code and the shortcoming of the IS code, particularly while selecting the permissible settlement for the gravity dam. And also he also explained very nicely and in the detail about how to analyze the gravity dam and the slope analysis by using the finite element method. So it was excellent presentation by Dr. Manna. And the third presentation was delivered by Professor Arindam De, and he delivered his lecture on non-linear ground response analysis, a case study of Amigaon, North Guwahati, Assam. And he nicely explained in detail about the background, how we have to do the non-linear analysis, like ground response analysis, and what are the things that we have to take care, and utility and the importance and the background of the ground response analysis. He also discussed about the one-dimensional nonlinear GRA, and what are the input parameter for the dynamic, like shear wave velocity and all those things. And he discussed about the case study by using how to solve this Amigaon case study by using the nonlinear GRA with the help of the borehole data and other cyclic triaxial data, and how to way forward. That is the very important thing he discussed, how we can do further things by using these techniques. So all three presentation was wonderful, and it was nice for me also, and I hope it is good for the audience as well. So thank you very much to all professors. Over to you, Professor Ramesh.
Indeed, it's an excellent presentation by all the three speakers, and also the excellent sum up too by Dr. Arvind Jha. Thank you very much, Dr. Arvind Jha. I once again thank the speakers for having given their excellent presentation, the co-chair for a wonderful sum up of all the three speakers. And on behalf of myself and the co-chair, I thank the organizers of 7th International Conference on Recent Advances in Geotechnical Earthquake Engineering and Soil Dynamics for giving us an opportunity to chair and co-chair this 11th panel session of the conference. Thank you very much. Now the stage is handed over to Raghuveer Rao. Raghuveer Rao, stage is yours now.
Thank you. So indeed, the three lectures were very good, and I thoroughly enjoyed all the three lectures. And on behalf of the organizing committee, we thank all the speakers.